So we are here with the legend of security, former Marine, police officer, and Jerry Springer Show security guard, Steve Wilkos. Thanks for coming on.
Sure.
So I guess my first question for you would be, how did you get this job?
Well, I was a Chicago police officer and I was working in the 14th district and Mike McDermott, who runs my security, he and his partner were working side gigs for Pinkerton. And whenever the Jerry Springer Show needed security, they would hire Pinkerton and Pinkerton would hire the cops that worked for them. Well, they needed an extra guy one day, and Mike, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I was walking out of the police station, and he said, "Hey, we need another guy." I worked at Jerry Springer Show. I didn't even know who Jerry Springer was. And I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And so I got my foot in the door, and actually a Cook County sheriff that was running the security for Pinkerton. Well, something happened where he got fired, and then I happened to be there. I had been there for a while now, working for this sheriff. And when he got fired, I was there, and they came to me, and just because I happened to be there, not because they liked me or they thought I was doing a great job or whatever. But they knew I was reliable, and they said, "Hey, would you like to run the security here?" I said, "Yeah." So I kind of cut everybody out that was under him, Pinkerton, all that. And I kept Mike, obviously, and his partner, Dan Puhar. And then I brought all my own guys in. And then we just rolled from that point on.
That's great. I mean, that's kind of like a once in a lifetime opportunity right there.
And, and that's a lot of being at the right place at the right time. That's the old adage that, you need a little bit of that in life. And it certainly, it worked out that way for me.
So what would you say like was the first big fight for you that you realized, oh, this is something crazy here?
I don't remember any one particular big fight. I do remember that I was, doing the show more and more. And back then, when we first started doing the show, we wore suit and ties, and I had hair. And I remember there was these two gay guys that kept fighting, 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 and they wouldn't stop. And like finally, Jerry said, I don't even know Jerry knew my name. And he's like, you sit in between the two of them and stop them from fighting. So I sat on stage in the chair between these two gay guys. And somehow my parents, they were living in Florida. And one of my mom's friends called up my mom and said, "Your son is involved in a homosexual love triangle. I saw him on his talk show." So my mom called me up, was like, "What's going on? Somebody saw it." And I said, "No, mom." I go, "I work on the show and I'm doing security." So that was kind of funny. And because, I didn't even think enough like, oh, I'm on TV. It wasn't even that serious to me at that time. So I didn't even tell my parents, "Oh, yeah, I got a security job on a TV show." It was so minor at the time that, I wasn't even thinking of that. But then I realized, wow, I am on TV and people are seeing me on TV. So that was the first start of it, realizing, what was going on.
Yeah, there's a fight that comes to mind. It's with this transgender woman, I guess you could say, Brittany.
Yeah, I remember. See, there's not, I can't remember what I taped this last week, let alone 30 years ago. But I remember Brittany. She was a black male, female. I don't know how you gender it anymore, but she was a man living as a woman. And she started kicking some ass on that stage, man. And she was tough. And that was a really big fight. And I think that was kind of like one of those shows that really started putting the Springer Show on the map, because that was pretty early on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the I posted a video not too long ago of that fight, and there's a part where she comes around the corner and picks up a chair and throws it, and you just happen to be there and you just knock it right out of the air.
Yeah. Yeah. Those chairs were heavy back then too. You get hurt.
Yeah, that was pretty epic. I mean, I would say
Yeah.
that's probably like my favorite fight from back in those days.
That was a good one. I know that. Like, like I said, it's been 30 years since I started on the Springer Show. I started in January, February of 94. And I mean, a lot of stuff it's just faded over time, but that fight I certainly remember. Um, and it's nice some of the clips that I see you post and that you're sending to me because a lot of it I would just it's been erased with the sands of time. I would never even remember it. So it's nice watching these and remembering some of the stuff I used to do.
I got a file on my computer full of them. I can email them all to you if you'd like. I mean, I got a ton of them.
Yeah, I mean I'm doing my Instagram now, TikTok, so and I think my fans get a kick out of seeing, because it's so funny. Like I've had my own show for 17 years now. I think some people don't even realize I was on the Jerry Springer show. I think the majority of people do, but there are people, young kids and stuff. They're like, "You have a Jerry Springer show?" I'm like, "That's why I'm where I'm at today because of it."
Well, I remember when you got your show because I was actually born in 94. And I remember, was it 2007 when you first got your show?
Yeah,
I remember seeing ads. I was about 13 years old for a new show, and I knew you from Springer reruns. But then I saw that you were getting the show. I was like, "Oh, this is going to be awesome!" Because I remember
yeah,
seeing you bring up the fights. So I've been a fan from like 2007. I've been with you the whole way, like watching the evolution of the show from '07 to now.
yeah. That's
Your
great.
show.
Yeah,
So
well, it's been nice. It's been a nice ride.
yeah, it's I feel like it's probably at its best. Well, when I came to the taping back in January 2020,
Yeah,
that's when it was the best, I think.
yeah. And even this last week, like we had a great week of taping. We did some really unusual stories, and so it's just ongoing, and I don't know where I don't see an end in sight, which I don't know if is a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll see.
Well, I did get to come up when Jerry was still living and I got to see his show when I was in college. And I brought my mother with me, and she knew nothing about any of it. And it came to the end of the show where like the guests get their Jerry beads, and this lady right in front of us does the thing, and my mom was like, "Mark, she showed the boobs," and I was like, "Yeah, that's part of it. Like it's awesome." And she's like, "You didn't tell me this," and I was like, "Well, it's
Yeah.
part of the thing."
You missed the heyday when we filmed the show in Chicago. I would say pre 2002. So pre 2002 in Chicago, I tell people all the time, going to a Springer show was like New Year's Eve party. Like it was huge. You think about going to a TV show and being that excited. I mean, tickets were really hard to come by. It wasn't like today where, you call up, you get tickets to my show, you get to probably come to any show you want. But back then, the tickets were almost impossible to get, because we probably back in the Chicago studio, I'm guessing it was like 250, maybe you could squeeze 300 in, and I'm thinking that's a lot of people. Um, but the tickets were really hard to go. And I even tell people like, if you went back to Chicago now and went to a Bulls game, it might be one experience to go to an NBA game, you see the Bulls play. But it ain't nothing like when Jordan played for the Bulls in the old stadium. And I mean, it was a madhouse, and people would dress up, and it was crazy. Like going to a Bulls game with Jordan was just nuts. And that's how the Springer Show was in Chicago. Like I said, pre 2002, because I remember Barry Diller owned this. Um, and he wanted to pull the plug on the whole show completely. He just wanted it off the air, and there was somebody that kind of talked him out of it, and then the show kept going. But there was a lot of restrictions put on it after that. But pre 2002, if you were in studio in Chicago and you saw one of the really good classic Springer shows, that's when it was at its zenith. It was just phenomenal.
I wish I could have been there. I was just a kid. I wish they'd have let teenagers go in there. I'd have had a ball.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I found another clip where you were this guy, a lot of people from the audience, it seemed back in the 90s, would run up on the stage and try to get a piece of the action. Was
Yeah.
there any incident of like getting into it with a guest, not a guest, an audience member where it got out of hand?
No, we did have to grab a couple once in a while, but nobody we had to really get rough with or anything. But yeah, we had some audience members, and I bet we had some crazy fights with like the Ku Klux Klan or whatever it was, and then a couple people threw some chairs from the audience, and that got to be a little dangerous at times. But for the most part, the audience was really involved, but we never got too out of hand.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I just remember like seeing some of those like you said the clan shows. I mean, they're constant like you can't tell who's audience and who's guest at that point. It's
I
like
mean, everything's just flying, right? It's like you took a talk show and you put it in a blender and everything's just spinning around. Chairs and the cameramen are coming on stage and audience members and so but it was just like 30 years ago I was 30 years old and I was just having a lot of fun, man. It was a blast.
yeah, one of the clan clips, Todd Schultz, I see him come off like trying to tackle one of the guys and he
And he
totally
lights
missed.
out. Yeah,
It was
that's
great.
hilarious. I used to bust his chops all the time about that. That was a good one. And yeah, and I forget he was a big part of the show. And he used to do a lot of the walks with me at the end of the show. And but yeah, so everybody kind of dust in the wind now.
Yeah, I mean, I whatever happened to Todd, do you know, after they canceled Springer?
I know he lived in the suburbs of Chicago, and I tried staying in touch with them, and I don't know. Maybe he was mad that the show ended or whatever, but I don't hear from him anymore, which is a little sad. But people move on. I mean, when we were all young, all the security guys were all cops, and we used to hang out. Man, we spent so much time when we weren't taping. We hung out together, and uh, like Jimmy Sherlock, him and me were working the bars together, and I would get bars that would hire me to run security, and then I would always bring Jimmy in. And then when I got the show, I brought Jimmy into the show, and but we spent lots of time together away from the show. We used to the whole crew. We'd go out bowling and we'd go out drinking, and we'd go to ball games together. We were a very tight knit group, and even with Jerry, me and Jerry would go to ball games, and I traveled all over with Jerry, and uh, those were the best years of my life. I mean, the most fun, and you think everybody was going to be like, oh, we're going to be hanging around forever together, but people move on. The some people left the show even before we left Chicago, and then when we left Chicago, a lot of guys didn't make the cut to come out to Connecticut, and people go their own ways, and guys start retiring from the police department, and so you kind of fall out of touch with people. But I mean, that's life, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed you guys got brand new security. Well, yeah, Jerry, and I feel like some of the guys that did Jerry's security went over to your show as well when you guys went to Connecticut.
No, I don't think so.
Not the Chicago guys. I mean, they hired new people from Connecticut to do it.
Yeah, so those guys maybe in the beginning, but I know we didn't. I know my wife, who was running both shows, she didn't like the guys working on both shows because she wanted a different look completely for the shows, and that's kind of one reason why like Todd wasn't my stage manager, um, because we wanted a different look for my show, and we didn't want the Springer and my show to like kind of blend together. There might have been a little bit of crossover, but like none of that happens now. Like I know none of my security works on like I don't think works on Cromwell and didn't work on Maury. Like Maury had his own guys when we're all in the same studio. And like even I brought like Dan Peterson on to the show and my wife's trainer now, Norm, he was another guy that we brought on to the show. He worked for a while on the show, Norm. And but they none of those guys worked on my show.
Yeah, I'm when I went to the show, I remember I met Chris, the big guy with the muscles.
Yeah. Now those guys they could work on my show, but they were mostly backstage.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about the guys that would appear on stage, be out in front. So backstage didn't really matter, but there was guys back, Big Chris, and I think he's down in Florida now. He's retired.
Yeah, I met Chris and Bob when I came up.
Yeah, Bob's gone now. He retired. I don't know where he's at. I mean, he was from Connecticut. I assume he's still in Connecticut, but I haven't seen Bob in a few years.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm glad that Mike is still with you.
Mike will be with me till the show's over. I mean, I met Mike in, so I got on, Mike came on the police department just before me in '89. I got on in '90. And then I started off in Wood Street. Mike was in 14. I was in 13. Then I went to 11. And then I think I went to 14 in 91. And that's when I met Mike. I met Mike in 1991. So I've known Mike, long, long time. In fact, I went to high school with his wife that passed away. But yeah, I knew her from high school.
He's scrappy. Like he
Yeah,
gets right in the middle of it too.
yeah. Mike. He's a great security guard and he's a great friend. And even for me, it's more of it's a comfort to have him there, right? Like I've known the guy forever. I just know he's always going to have my back, and I'm very loyal. I mean, I wouldn't be where I'm at if Mike didn't offer me a job 30 years ago. So Mike's never going anywhere.
That's good. I remember when I was at the taping, we had a couple people's cell phones, even though of course they tell you not to do that. Had a couple people's cell phones go off, and he went off on them, and you
Yeah,
you were on the stage, and you said he's just going to come down there and jack you, and everybody started laughing.
yeah, yeah. He does a good job.
So you said you worked some of the bars with Jimmy, uh, off when you weren't taping the show. Any crazy fights come out of that were equivalent to Springer?
Well, those are more dangerous, right? Because people start swinging beer bottles uh, and in fact, I was working with Jimmy. I don't know if he was working me the one night. I was working at Baja Beach Club. It was down by the water. It was a big, big bar, early '90s, And in fact, Jerry came in one night, and I ended up hanging out with him. But it's one night we were throwing these guys out, and I'm walking this guy out, and one of his friends came out of nowhere and blindsided me, hit me with a Heineken bottle, cracked the side of my face, and I had a little million pieces of bottles stuck in my face. But thank God, I mean, it could have carved me up or could have lost an eye. But I remember I was almost, I mean, my head was spinning. My head felt like it exploded. I was working with this older cop because I was a young cop back then. And he tried to run out the front door, and the old cop chased him. And then we had some other cops waiting at the front door, and we grabbed them. And needless to say, that guy he got tenderized like a piece of beef.
Deserved it, 100%.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, so like, working the bars, I didn't have a lot of problems. And, you know, most of the time it was, when we worked some of the bigger clubs, you'd have some big fights. But then the last bar that me and Jimmy worked at that I knew the owner, this guy, Herb Rosen, who owned Liars Club in Chicago. It's still there, actually. I saw Herb last year. So me and Jimmy went in there, and they had regular security bouncers, but then they'd have me or Jimmy, and we didn't work together. So either I worked or Jimmy worked, and it was a smaller bar, and so we didn't have a lot of problems. Once in a while, had to throw somebody on their ass, throw them out on the street, but smaller bar didn't have a lot of problems. Plus, they wanted us there to keep the riffraff out. And once you keep the riffraff out, they can't get in. You're not going to have a lot of problems.
Well, that brings me to my next question. So I know a lot of times, like especially when you started hosting Jerry's show, there was like a couple episodes where people were trying to confront you, or there was this one in particular where this big overweight guy, like he smacked his girlfriend, and all you guys jumped on him and took him backstage. Now, when you guys did that, did you like rough them up further backstage?
uh, maybe. I mean, I don't want to say anything too much to get in trouble with NBC, but you had to get physical sometimes, just like a policeman. But I'll say this, most of the time, 99.9% of the time, the guests were great. They'd listen to us. We didn't have problems with them. Maybe once or twice in all the years I worked at, we had to get a little handsy, let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, I was kind of concerned in that episode where the guy got up in Jerry's face and wanted to fight him.
Oh, that was he was like a priest or something. And he kept making anti-Semitic remarks to Jerry. Jerry's a lot of family of Jerry's was killed in the Holocaust, and so this guy, he was I forgot what he was kind of like in some religion, but it was crazy. And he was a big dude. I remember that. And that's if you watch that episode, I had a suit and tie on, I had handcuffs and my belt. You could see at one point. But the guy was telling Jerry, "Oh, I got your mother in my trunk in my car. She's a lampshade, all this stuff." And I knew Jerry for 30 years. I never saw the guy get mad, but he got mad on that episode. Was the only time I ever saw the guy got mad. And Jerry jumped up and was like, and that guy stood up and like that guy would have just killed Jerry, just beat him into a pulpit. And back then, I was working with my buddy Mike O'Connor, who worked the show with me, and you could see I get right in between, and I'm kind of pushing the big guy away. I'm not like, and I'm like Jerry, man, like Jerry would have fought. I think he really wanted a piece of that guy, but Jerry would have got hurt. So I'm glad I got up there real quick.
Yeah, so the great thing about YouTube is like when those videos get posted, people start commenting and you learn I found out the guy's name. So I start Googling this guy. He's been arrested for like really messed up stuff
Yeah, I think
since
he's a
that
white
happened.
supremacist.
Yeah, but he like I want to say he was messing with like underage kids. Like he was
Yeah,
he's
I remember, I vaguely remember the storyline, but I remember he had some wives that were, teenagers, and they probably, at that time, I don't, but they're probably borderline, child, child endangerment or something. But yeah, that guy he was a bad guy.
yeah, I mean that's like the one that stands out. My girlfriend works at ABC News and they did a spot when Jerry passed and she's comes to me and she goes, "All right, so what can we use for sound bites like from the show?" She's like, "You're the Springer guy, like you know all this stuff." I said, "Well, you got to get the clip of him with the guy arguing." So I found it for her and like they ended up in the podcast.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's another one that just stands out. And I remember seeing you and I'm like, "Wait a minute, Steve had hair at one time?" I was like, "This is
yeah. Well, the funny thing was, I was in the Marines for a long time. I was in for 6.5 years. When I was in high school, I had long blonde hair. I mean, I know people find that hard to believe, but I had long blonde hair. And then when I went in the Marines, obviously they shaved it off. And so for the next 6.5 years, I had very short hair. Well, when I got out of the Marines, I started growing it long, but then I noticed I was receding and started getting a bald spot in the back. And so then I started cutting my hair shorter and shorter and shorter. And I did the comb back, with Moose, and then it was we were down in Daytona Beach doing Springer Break from Daytona Beach, and the old executive producer he said, "Hey, why don't you shave your head? We're gonna make you into a star." I'm like, "Yeah, okay," but I'm like, "Yeah, I'll shave my head," and worked out pretty good. And I love being bald now. Like I can even my wife, like I'll go a week or something without shaving. She's like, "You gotta shave," she hates it. Even my kids, they don't like when I let my hair grow out.
yeah, I noticed during the pandemic you'd post some videos and I was you can see it a little bit. I was
uh,
like,
well, during the pandemic, I did this thing where I didn't shave for a real long time. I was getting pretty gray and hairy, and we led it up to we did a vote on Instagram. The people voted whether I shave or keep it, and overwhelming it was to shave, so I shaved.
I said keep it for the record. I was like, no,
Yeah,
let him try something
yeah, but
new.
I don't have a nice color like you do. It feels nice. Mine, I look like a mountain man from West Virginia. Not too good.
Yeah, I mean, no, I mean it was a look. I mean, but you just
Yeah.
mentioned Springer Break. I mean, what was the craziest thing you saw down doing those shows?
Me personally, I never cared for them because I never liked being out of the studio because they were just different shows, right? Like they're more elaborate stage production type numbers, and we have, and show titles that we'd never get away with now, like, I'm dating a tranny, or, but they were more production kind of type of show. So I didn't have to do a lot because there was no fighting in like Springer Break or when we used to do the shows down from Jamaica. We did that a couple years. So to be honest, I was just down there having a good time. I mean, I didn't have a lot to do. I just was kind of hanging with Jerry, make sure nobody ever messed with Jerry anyways, but I was always there to make sure nobody did. But so when we would do that, like Daytona Beach or Jamaica, and me and Jerry went down to MTV Spring Break, and we did Springer Show down there. It was like a vacation for me.
But I'm
So
sure the Jerry
to answer
bees,
your question, I don't remember a lot because back in those days I used to drink a lot too. So
well, I'm sure the Jerry bees were even more prevalent down at Springer Break.
yeah, I mean, oh yeah, Springer Break, geez. But when we did the ones for Daytona, I don't know if we had Springer beads yet. I don't think we did. I don't know. Truthfully, I don't even know when those came into play. But I know, like at the end, man, oh my God, everybody wanted their Springer beads, and there was a lot of good ones, and there was a lot of bad ones. That's for
When I
sure.
went to the taping, I can attest to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, once in a while, you saw, some that were like pens. You saw a lot of ones and twos, though.
And it was funny too, because a lot of times, like you guys as security, if you pay attention, like when someone would do it, you guys could just not hide how you truly felt. It was just like you could see it in your face. You're like, oh my God. Like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it just anything went. There was no rules. That was so great about that show. It's just, there was no script, and I mean, you have a basic formatted show, but a lot of times the train went off the tracks and we just ran with it. It was a lot of fun.
yeah, I mean, you guys, and that's the thing too, is like you guys genuinely seem to like be having fun together. It was like a brotherhood of sorts.
We did. We had a lot of fun. Now there were some personalities, but not with me, but the guys below me, and this guy resented that guy for whatever reason, and there was some of that I always had to deal with, which I didn't like. But because one thing was like, I guess I was the star security, but I didn't even care about it. You know what I mean? Like I just didn't care. Like I was there, I was having fun. I didn't care about who's the bigger star. And some of the guys got wrapped up in that, and I thought it was petty and childish. But uh, but for the most part, we all got along really well, and we had a lot of fun together. Like I said, not only did we spend a lot of time on stage together, we spent a lot of time, you know, doing things, bowling and hanging out with each other, just going, doing things together. So we spent an enormous amount of time together.
Yeah, I heard I think I heard a little bit about that drama you just mentioned. I'm of course not going to name any names, but I know a little bit from what I've heard in other interviews about that stuff, and I hate that that was the case.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, when guys get thrown into an unusual situation like that, and because you got to remember, there was like they were printing publicity stuff with the Springer guys, publicity photos and uh, T-shirts and all kind of stuff. And some guys were jealous. This guy got this, or that guy got that, and or this guy went on with me with Letterman, and this guy did Leno. Kind of that stuff. But I can understand it to a degree because nobody wants to be left out. But there was just times it wasn't for everybody, and like and there were some guys that were more popular than other guys, and that's just a fact of life. I mean, I was the most popular, and nothing was going to change that. And it's not that I picked that or anybody picked that; it's the audience picked me, right? Like I only got to where I'm at is because the audience fell in love with me, like cheered me on and made me what I am. So you can try to put somebody in a position and say, okay, we're going to try and make you this, but if the audience doesn't like you, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean?
That's right. I mean, it's funny because some of the videos, like I have the security page on Facebook, and I post every day, do stories. I get a lot of engagement. I got about 2,300, likes on there. And actually, Jerry's publicist Linda is a big fan of the page. She's constantly liking all the stuff. But people will say, well, someone should have given Pete his own show or Jason his own show or this. And I'm thinking, that's not really how it works.
Well, first of all, the Springer Show was a huge show, and I got spun off. But the fact that I got spun off is like one in a billion, right? Not one in a million, one in a billion, because even though the show was very popular and very successful, it still had a stigma to it. A lot of people, oh, it's trash, it's this, it's trash TV. So the fact that they could even launch another show off of it being me, you know, and it wasn't just the security guys. There was guys that were like camera guys and assistant stage managers and all this that thought they were going to get their own show, And I think Todd thought he was going to get his own show, and like it just doesn't work like that because and I think they thought with me, with my background of being a Marine and being a police officer, I had a very, like a solid background where people can say, "Oh, I respect them for that, and I respect them for this," and then I had such huge popularity on the Springer Show that I got my own show. But there was no more shows coming out of the Jerry Springer Show. That never was going to happen again. So, and I guarantee you, Pete never thought that way. Pete never thought, "Oh, I'm going to get my own show." And Pete had a nice little career himself. Like he was in movies, he was in TV shows, and so Pete certainly knew probably more than anybody how hard this business is, and getting your foot in the door with other things. So, and Jason's a great guy, and I think he's doing quite well for himself now after he left the show. Well, not left the show ended, but he was very close with Jerry, and runs a successful boxing gym in Chicago, and uh, I certainly Jason's not the kind of guy who thought he was going to get a show, but yeah, there was guys that thought, oh, maybe I'll get a show, or I'm next, and like, there's no next. I would try to tell guys that, like, there is no next. Like, it's a fluke that I got a show, and then, and the other thing is, I had to like, I left the job before I even got my show, so I was dedicated, like I was all in. Nobody else made that move. I made that move. I was basically betting on myself, and I didn't even know I was going to get a show. So, it worked out for me. But you look at other people that have come and go. They're big names in TV. Jeff Probst from Survivor came out with a show. Kay Kerr came back. Ricky Lake tried to come back. Arsenio Hall tried to come back. All these people that are big names, big stars, and they've all failed. So, it's really, really a tough business.
Yeah, I when I talked to Jason, I mean, he told me, he said, I'm not gonna lie, he's like when Judge Jerry came on, he's like, I was kind of bitter they didn't bring me on as the bailiff.
I was bitter for him too.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what society demands nowadays. You gotta have certain a look for a show, this and that, and maybe some of it was again. I'm not speaking with any kind of knowledge here. I think that like they did with me, they didn't want crossover between the two shows. Maybe they wanted to separate the Springer Show from Jason. I thought Jason would be a natural fit for that position. I was hoping he would get it. I thought he should have got it, but they obviously went with a different direction. And I think, and I don't think that was Jerry's idea either.
Yeah, no, I think the guy they used was a fireman. And I'm like, well, Jason's a police officer.
I heard he was a fire. I don't know if I ever met the guy. You know, uh, so nothing bad to say about anybody, but I certainly could understand if Jason was bitter why he didn't get that position. I would totally agree with him. I thought he should have got it, but it wasn't up to me, obviously.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, totally changing gears. So the uncensored shows, I know they did those for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pay-per-view stuff. Anything overly crazy come out of that? I saw a few of those.
Well, so there's two things. The two first uncensored tapes, those were just clips from the shows that we did, right? And so those were big sell. The first one was like the biggest video selling tape of all time. Um, and that was crazy. And then the second one, actually, I watched the second one. I remember getting a tape of Jerry Springer Uncensored 2 and watching it, and I was like, "Oh my God, this show's so violent!" Like it was like, and even though because I never went home and watched the show. Like I never watched the Springer Show because I was on it. People are, oh, don't you watch the Springer Show? I'm like, no, I'm on it. Like I watch it all the time. I'm there. But I did watch that uncensored too, and I was like, holy moly, this is crazy. But then we would do the pay-per-view, okay? And again, pay-per-view was kind of like what I was telling you before about stage production shows. They were more like the Springer Break, and they were, the hot model dating the little midget, or, I don't think you're supposed to say that anymore, but back then we did. And, so those were those type of shows. We had a lot of strippers, and there was a lot of nudity. And so again, when it came to the pay-per-view, I didn't have a lot to do. I would show up, and there was some things I did. Maybe I don't even remember, but like I have not a lot of involvement with those shows. And here's the other thing: I didn't get paid any extra for those. Everybody else was getting paid extra on those shows, like the camera crew and that they all got made more money when they did that. I didn't get anything extra, so I didn't care about those. Not to lie, I mean, I just didn't care.
That's kind of odd that, you being like show talent, being on
Yeah.
stage, you
But
would,
again, we didn't. Those shows didn't have a lot of fighting or anything in them. There were a lot of food fights, a lot of food messy stuff, and I would have my security guys do that because I didn't want to get covered with spam or something stupid like that. So yeah, so I didn't get paid any extra for uncensored, and so a lot of times I don't think I was even in them. You know what I mean? Like I had very limited role in those.
I actually had one of the little people reach out to me on the page, and she said, "I saw you posted one of my clips." She's like, "Can you send that to me for my reel?" And I was like, "Well, it's interesting how you go to me instead of NBC." I said, "But sure, I'll email it to you."
But see, I don't even know if you could contact the show. No, first of all, you could contact the show and say, "Oh, I was on the show in 1997 or 2002." Nobody cares. Nobody's going to send you a clip of the show. Nobody's going to go. You know how many shows there's? I think there was over 5,000 Springer episodes. Somebody would have to research that and like track you down. I mean, who's going to do that? Like people ask me, they're like, "Oh, I was on the show 10 years ago. Can I get a clip?" And I'm like, "No." I mean, like, get out of here.
But if you look hard enough, you can find that stuff on the internet.
If you want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Do
I mean,
you?
that's how I found all of my stuff, like for the
Yeah,
page.
but I
Is
mean, if that's something you want to do, but like if somebody's looking for a clip they want, like like I just got my TikTok account. Somebody's like, my mom was on the show in 1998. Can I get a clip? And I'm like, what are you crazy? Like, I don't even know if I could get a clip of me from the Springer Show. Like, like I don't even know where they keep those old tapes, and there must be a vault there because I said I brought this point up at the end of last year. I said how come like Springer still airs in reruns? But I go, how come they don't air the ones from like the late 90s? I said, if there are those, the ratings would be beating my show. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Those are great. But they must be on some kind of restricted list where they can't air those shows.
I think
Well, and
so.
I think the other thing is too, I was told one of the reasons why I think is because of the switch over of format from digital to HD TV and all that. They would have to do something with all those old tapes or something like that. So I think that's a problem too. But I do think like there must be some other restrictions that they're too violent or whatever. Because let me tell you, if they aired all those original episodes, that show would still be number one.
Well, that's the thing too, is like I think a lot of the show titles as well, like especially when they're called like transsexual or tranny, with the language not being what people want to hear now.
The show is so politically incorrect now, right? Like the stuff that you could do and get away with back then, you couldn't get away with any of that nowadays. There's no way. A show like that would never air today.
No, I mean the show that I went to was called Tranny Bomb, and I people asked me to see it, and I'm like, I don't, and I actually insulted one of those people in the roast. I did the first roast. Jerry came up with the mic, and I said
Uh,
something about him looking like Khloe Kardashian and Ursula, and the audience thought it was great. And You know, they could never. I just feel weird sending it out. Not that I have an issue with it, but
Right.
certain people would. You know.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, it's it's just like a lot of things, Mort Downey Jr. used to do a show, used to smoke cigarettes on stage. I'd love to smoke a big fat cigar on my stage, but that ain't gonna happen. I mean, times have changed, so you can't do that anymore.
No, I mean, the Surgeon General come on, you know, knocking at the door, like you can't do that.
Exactly.
You know.
Well, you can't smoke inside anywhere anymore either. So
Yeah, I got a coworker who's 21, just turned 21, and I said, you know, we used to be, you know, not me. I said, but my parents used to smoke cigarettes when we go in a restaurant. He's like, you used to do that back then? I said, yeah. I said, that not that long ago.
we'd get done taping Springer Show, and Jerry was a big cigar smoker, and the old executive producer was a cigar smoker. I was a cigar smoker. We'd go out to dinner after like a taping on a Tuesday or Wednesday or something, and I remember it'd be like in Carmine's or somewhere. And man, you get done with dinner, you just pull out a cigar right there in the middle of the restaurant and you start smoking. Can you imagine? And we're not even talking cigarettes, we're talking about cigars. And yeah, but that's been going for a long time now.
Yeah, I wish it was still a thing. I mean, I would do that myself. Not that I smoke cigarettes or anything, but I mean, you know,
I don't miss the smoking in restaurants. And it was funny because I worked in bars and I used to wear hard contacts back in the day. And I remember at the end of the day, I'd want to rip out my contacts because all the smoke would burn in my eyes. And the first time I had been anywhere, I was doing an appearance in Boston in a bar. And I remember at the end of the night, I was like, man, there's something different. I go, my eyes aren't burning. They're like, yeah, there's no smoking here in Boston. That was the first city I had been to where there was no smoking in bars. And then Chicago followed eventually. And I have a lake house up in Wisconsin, and they were like the last place I think in America that still I remember we took our kids, they were really small, and we went to a diner. And, the cook, we walked in, and the cook had a big old cigarette hanging out of his mouth and slinging some hash and some eggs. And I go, I don't think I want to eat here. But eventually, even then, like, there's no smoking anywhere, which I like. No restaurants, because, nothing like you'd be eating a meal and then all of a sudden somebody light up a cigarette at the next table is disgusting. So,
yeah. Well, I did. Before I let you go, I had a few more questions about your show.
sure.
Since you got your show. Actually, one of them is from a buddy of mine who used to watch your show with me in the very beginning. And I told him I'd be talking with you. He said, well, can you ask him this one question for me? I said, sure. So he says, did you feel like you were able to do more to stop child predators as a cop or outing them on your own show?
Um, it's different because when you're a cop, nobody sees you doing your job, right? I mean, you're handling an incident, and the only people involved is the family, the perpetrator, the victim, and the police. When you have a show where we advocate for victims of sexual abuse, you reach a lot of people. Not only, are you affecting the people that are on the show, but over the years, these 17 years, I get so many people saying, hey, or even writing and emailing into the show saying, you gave me the courage to speak up, to have this person stop doing this to me. So I think I did a lot of effective police work and I put some bad people away. So it's different, but when you're reaching the level of people that you might have an impact, TV obviously has a much, much greater impact.
Sorry, I
I
was
can't,
muted.
yeah,
I was muted.
yeah.
When I came and saw your show, it was actually a molestation case. And I remember I was sitting 2 rows back from the stage. And this was before COVID. I noticed your audience is further back now.
Yeah, a
We
little
were
bit.
still right up on it back.
Yeah, yeah. I never, I kind of thought about that not too recently, but kind of passed through my mind. But you're right, like the stage used to come right up. But I don't know if that's because of COVID but yeah, they're quite a bit back more further away.
Well, I was sitting towards the left-hand side center stage. Mike was like 2 chairs over, and the guy failed the polygraph. And I mean, he ran up on the stage, and there was no fighting. But I remember sitting there, and I was with my girlfriend, and I was just getting so angry. And I told her once the camera stopped rolling, I said, "Listen," I said, "if that had been my family member, no, none of those guys could have stopped me. I would have found a way to get to that guy. That would have been the end of it."
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? Just be grateful you're not in that position. But that's why we do have really good security. And I mean, obviously, the subject matter is so serious, and we're not going to allow fighting and all that. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to get somebody who really wants to hurt somebody if you did something bad to their child.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm of the school of thought if you do something like that, you get what you get.
And a lot of people have gone to jail after they appeared on the show, so it's done some people some good.
I saw a couple episodes where I know the famous one obviously where you get hit with a metal bowl. But
Yeah,
also there was one where a guy threw his mic pack at you and it's like he slowly reaches behind and then he throws it and he misses and then you guys kick him off. But
yeah, I don't even remember that one.
yeah, I'll send you the clip of that. That's he
You know what's
slowly.
crazy? Like I see you wearing this shirt,
Oh
and
yeah.
I want and when we were the ones that just said Jerry Springer on them, and I don't have one Jerry Springer shirt. Like I didn't keep any shirt. Like it's so crazy, man. And then we had the bowling shirts. I don't even know if I have any of those. And I like it. I didn't think like, oh, I should save one for myself. Like put it away, and that's kind of crazy.
Well, Pete,
I think I got some tiles from the old set. Uh, I got well, I got tons of mementos, but like from the set and the shirts. And I really didn't think to keep one, but I should have.
well, Pete actually gave me this when I came to the taping because he knew I was
Oh, really?
coming. And I came up on the stage and he had it around his shoulder. He's like, "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" He's like, "I would have given you front row seats." And I was like, "Well, I didn't know you could do that." So he handed me this. He said, "Well, take the shirt." So
Yeah,
he gave me this.
that's cool.
Um, but he told me a story about him. He had a bunch of those shirts. And he said that he and Jason would go around Chicago and give them to homeless guys. So there was a bunch of homeless guys in Chicago wearing the security shirts.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. And he actually had a
Yeah.
picture of a few of them like standing there, this guy like looking like no teeth and he's wearing this security shirt, like
Well, I know my parents, like, they used to want shirts, and then when I got my show, like, they'd have them in the trunk of their car. They were like, Jerry Seinfeld's parents, and they'd be passing them out. And, I used to call them my Florida publicists because, they couldn't, anybody that was waiting on them or cut my dad's hair, oh, you know who my son is, so he always got a big kick out of that.
they came to a taping one time, right? I think you made reference to him in the audience.
Yeah, well, my mom started yelling at the guy on stage, and I had to tell her to be quiet. But yeah, they had a big kick out of it. My dad passed away, and actually today's my mom's birthday, so I talked to her today. She got a big kick out of always coming to the show.
Yeah, today's my aunt's birthday too. That's a good day to have a birthday.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was I think there was another question I had. I'm trying to look at my notes here. Oh, there was actually. So there was another guest on your show that tried to headbutt you one time. I don't know if did he actually make contact or not because it looked like he came pretty close.
Yeah, I vaguely remember that, but he tried, but he didn't. He wasn't close enough. He didn't hit me, and that guy's lucky because that guy would have got jacked up. I'll tell you that right there. He would have got an uppercut right to his jaw. But no, he tried, but he missed.
There was another one too
I'm
when
also listen. This isn't my first rodeo. I know to create space and distance. Like I'm not gonna let some guy just walk up on me. Like just like when I was a policeman, it ain't gonna happen. I'm not gonna let you get up in my face and yell. Like no, man, I'm always gonna keep that distance. So one, I don't get hit, and two, if something does happen, you're going down real quick.
right. I mean, I wouldn't mess with you. I don't understand these people's logic, but that's just me. I mean, but it's funny because my day job I work with federal police recruits. I live in DC.
Yeah.
And essentially, I'm what I call a government stuntman. I go to work and I get jacked up by like police recruits. Do these fight scenarios and then they tackle
Yeah.
me and throw me around, put me in cuffs. I've been in cuffs more times for someone who's never been arrested than anybody I know.
Yeah, I was a Marine out there at Quantico. We used to go into We used to go into Georgetown a lot, and I love that area. Quantico was a beautiful base, and I really liked that area a lot.
Yeah, and those guys are tough, and they're only like 24 years old. And I mean,
Yeah.
imagine someone like who's got all the experience you have. I mean, these guys are tough enough, but I would never ever try that with
Yeah.
you. Like,
But I'm getting old, so
but that's who you have to watch out for is the older guys. Those are the ones with the experience,
uh,
you know.
yeah.
Uh, there was another guest on the Chicago show who kept pushing you, and you told him, you're like, you push me again and see what happens. And he did, and you just went full on, like grabbed him, shoved him into the door. Like I was like, holy shit.
Yeah. We had a few of those. Like I said, when I was security, I could get really, really handsy with the guests. When you're the host of the show, you really don't want that look, you know what I mean? So back in the day on Springer, you could use your muscle, as the host. You let the guys do their job, I do mine.
Well, I'm gonna let you go. I really appreciate you doing this. I'm gonna stop recording. If you don't mind just hanging on for a couple minutes, I just wanted to
Sure.
ask you a couple things without the camera being
Sure.
recorded. Okay. But again, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, no problem.